Hi, this is Debbie with Cheyenne Wyoming Urban Gardener, back with another video, and just out here looking at the garden. It's late in the evening, and I just wanted to talk to everybody about something that I keep getting questions about, and that's just a lot of questions. I get them every year, but this year it seemed to be more prevalent than others. I guess it's because most people are, or a lot of people are starting gardens this season or have started gardens, and they're just unsure what to do. So this is one of the best times, I think, for a lot of the YouTube creators out there. I don't really consider myself a creator because I do this mostly for a hobby, but I think that a lot of people are getting started with new gardens, and this is a great teaching opportunity because they're asking me, how do I make my garden look so good? Of course, it's not perfect. We have things that we have to clean up and damage that happens from winds and temperatures and weather, all kinds of things like that. But one of the reasons, or one of the things that I do to help make my garden look better is that I'm kind of more of a stickler for organization. And even though I move my crops around every year, it's not really crop rotation that I'm doing. It's just that I like to maximize my space as much as I can, and get things growing where I can. And then, of course, we've expanded this season. My garden started out, if you go back and look in some of the prior videos from a few years ago, my garden started out with nothing more than a flower bed that was converted into some gardening space, and it was rather small, only about 5 feet wide in certain areas, and then sometimes it was 10 feet or 15 feet wide in other areas. So just started out with a scalloped looking garden against the big Victorian house that we have. And again, the Victorian house takes up most of the space of our property here because it is large. It is in the National Historic Registry. So again, this house takes up most of the property, and I don't really have a whole lot of land to work with. So all we had was flower beds. And even though I love flowers, there's not a whole lot of flowers that you can eat. Probably more than I grow is out there that you can eat. And again, that is the house. But not of the types that I grow or that I eat readily. So I prefer growing plants that produce a lot of food that I can that I can put away. And I will even call myself a prepper. I know that there's a lot of negative connotations with that these days, but I do consider myself a prepper. I have a large pantry down in the basement that I do a lot of canning and putting away food and picking up on sales and things of that nature. Now, I don't have animals here other than dogs that I raise for meat or anything like that. Trust me, if I had the space, I would do it. In the city of Cheyenne, we are permitted to have 5 chickens, hens, no roosters, but there's so many stipulations that go along with keeping those 5 chickens that we've just found it not to be worth it. In the long run, in my opinion, when you have a garden, you're doing it not only because of growing food, or growing it organically, it tastes better, those kinds of things. You're also doing it because of money. Especially during times like these with the inflation that's going on right now, you're wanting to grow food because it's cheaper. So when you get into a situation of where you're having to, and this is not to knock other gardeners that can afford raised beds or think they need raised beds, all of those expensive raised beds, but to me they're expensive. Some of the raised beds that I have seen, either getting the big galvanized steel ones or ordering off of, I think it's Vigo or garden stalk planters and things like that, to me those are expensive. And I can build my own raised beds, but I don't need them because I have in-ground planting and it's all doing great. A lot of people will say that you can't grow in-ground in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Well, you can. I'm doing it. I've done it every year for 7 years. You just have to work with the seasons. The seasons are not long in Cheyenne, in Wyoming in general, a lot shorter in the northern parts of Wyoming. But down here in Cheyenne, which is just on the southern part, pretty close to Fort Collins, the ground gets a little bit warmer. We're in garden zone 5A, 5B. So if you look that up on a US map, if you look for your garden zones, it'll tell you what garden zone that you are in, how long your season usually is, when your last frost date is. Now those are not always guaranteed. We've had frost all the way up to the first week of June here, and sometimes it can go even longer. Sometimes we can have a random freeze in the middle of July, or even August and things like that. So you really have to be careful about those things. Have some fleece to cover your plants. Be able to take your plants inside if you've got containers and things like that to kind of avoid that situation. But that's how we keep our garden beautiful or pretty here, is just by maintaining it. I come out and I pull weeds almost every day. Every day sometimes I miss a weed, so I'll come back out and I will pull more weeds. And we succession plant, not a huge amount like a lot of other people do, because we just don't have the season for it. But we do succession planting. If we have seeds that don't come up, or we make transplants and they don't last, say they die for some reason, we have another plant, because we always have plants in the bank, as we say, to come out and replace a plant that dies. We start most of our own seeds, so that way we don't have to purchase plants. It is a lot more cost efficient, and we look for clearance sales, such as the trellises that you see in front of you here. Those all 4 were on clearance, and I just picked them up as I have a little bit of extra money that I can do so. I've picked them up a piece at a time. I picked up the 2 pieces right there. Later on I picked up these 2 pieces. I've got 2 more pieces that can go into the garden to replace these 2, and I'm going to move these 2 back over here to where my beans are. Sometimes I will even use beans that are in a package that I've bought from the grocery store for dry beans to shell and to cook up. So then I will plant those, and those come on and produce food. I have been known to take onions that were sprouting and put those in the ground and grow those on out. And I save a portion of my bulbs every season, so that way I have some of those. So that's a little bit more cost efficient. I do a lot of the hard work, the tilling and things like that. I do that on my own. And if you are in a position where you can't really buy a tiller because they are expensive, then you can rent one. There are places where you can rent a tiller for a day, for a couple hours, whatever you need. And a garden this size that I have, it might look big, but it's actually not. And tilling this garden only took me about 2 hours. And that is this plot, that plot, that plot. All together I have 9 plots right now that I grow out of. And all the little lights that you see, the solar lights, I pick those up on clearance. I just pick them up wherever I can. Menards, I'm not sure if you have a Menards where you are, or any of the hardware stores that things like that go on clearance at the end of a season. Pick them up for the next season. My rule of thumb for myself is if it costs more than $5, I really have to think about it. That's just the way it is. And that is even the same for the clothing that I wear, the food that I buy, if I do buy food. And, there's some things that I just cannot grow here because there's just not enough space, like wheat to ground into flour or things like that. I just do not have enough room here for that. And I barely have enough room for potatoes and corn. And I've really had to become inventive with how I do that. And then I'm continuing to expand the garden. The garden is not only just contained here anymore, or the other plot that I've shown you. It also goes across my walkway, and we're beginning to work into the next garden bed, or next flower bed was what it was originally. So we've started planting over here. I've got pumpkins in here, and I have lots of things growing in here. Beets. This is where I moved all my beets and most of my lettuces to, and rutabaga and things like that, so I could get them out of this main garden, so we have more space for more plants. So that's something to think about. That's a little bit more cost efficient. Maybe moving things around. Work with the space that you have. And even if you do not have space and you have a balcony, you can have containers to grow in. I have over 100 containers at this point and still expanding for the season. And I grow tomatoes in a 1-gallon pot. So if you can find that, they're usually pretty cheap. Home Depot and Lowe's both have contractor pots, they call them. 98 cents a piece. You can get a 12-inch pot, and you can grow something out of it. You can make your own potting soil. You don't have to buy the potting soil. If you've got soil, if you've got a little bit of soil that you could pick up, you can put some amendments in it. Just purchase a little bag of perlite or vermiculite, or even ask someone if they have some left over on, say, Craigslist. If they have some left over from a prior season they don't need anymore, or they've decided to get out of gardening, just ask if they have that available that you could take it and make some soil. Even ask if they have old potting soil sitting around. Doesn't matter how long that it's been in a bag and it's been sitting around. If it's completely dried out, you can rehydrate it, you can work with it, and you can get it going. And you can actually save yourself a lot of money in groceries and in time and in product, because you can start your own, make your own, do your own. So like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for new notices on videos as they come out. And again, this is Debbie with Cheyenne Wyoming Urban Gardener. We'll see you in the next one.